Well, to find out a bit more about how the European Union has been reacting to all of this, let's go now to Brussels with correspondent Dave Keating. Dave, has there been a more precise reaction to the Omicron variant from the EU?
Well, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says that we are now in a race against time on the Omicron variant to both to understand it and to be prepared for whatever implications it's going to have. Now, she has told EU member states to block entry for people coming from southern African countries where this variant was first developed, but they are cautioning against any premature closures of borders within the European Union or the Schengen area. But already we're seeing some countries impose what are effectively border closures. For instance, Switzerland is now requiring a quarantine period for people coming from Belgium, where the first European case was identified. Malta is also putting in quarantine requirements for people coming from EU countries. That does seem to violate the spirit, if not the letter, of the agreement that EU countries reached in June 2020 to stop internal EU border closures. They're supposed to be keeping those borders open. They are all still technically open, but these quarantine requirements are coming in, which can usually mean an effective border closure and certainly rules out any type of tourism. So we're waiting to see what the result is going to be of those investigations, but that's going to take 2 weeks. Now, in the meantime, the Commission is saying these border closures for the external border from southern African countries is just temporary. But of course, other countries have followed suit, the UK, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Some countries have closed borders entirely to all foreigners, such as Israel. They're really hoping they don't see a repeat of that here in the EU, because we saw chaotic and uncoordinated border closures at the beginning of this pandemic, and the EU really doesn't want to see that again. They want to make sure that any border closures are coordinated. So far, not good signs on that front, though, because not all EU countries have followed the instruction to close the external border to the southern African countries. That is technically a national competence, but again, they've had this agreement for a while that they're supposed to be all having the same policy for external border closures within the EU's Schengen passport-free travel area, and we are not seeing that so far.
And to make this whole situation more complex, on top of this new Omicron variant, Europe is still being particularly hard hit by the Delta variant. Talk us through how the situation's been developing across the EU.
Yeah, I mean, this uncertainty around the Omicron variant couldn't be coming at a worse time, because Europe is currently seeing a surge of Delta variant cases, and that's resulted in a number of lockdowns across the continent. Eastern European countries went into lockdown several weeks ago when cases started rising there, but then when cases started rising in Western Europe, also, quite recently, countries have responded. The Netherlands first closed all nightlife and said all bars and restaurants have to close at 8 p.m. yesterday. That got moved earlier to 5 p.m. In Belgium, on Saturday, we had a nightlife closure here starting. All nightclubs, discotheques have to be closed entirely. Theaters, restaurants, bars, cafes can stay open, but only until 11 p.m. We're also seeing an entire lockdown in Austria, in Slovakia, and also new restrictions coming into place, although much, much less severe in the UK and in France. So we are coming back to a lockdown period just as the Christmas season is starting, and I think countries are waiting to see what, first of all, if these measures they've taken so far can get the caseload to go down and make sure that they have capacity at hospitals. But I think certainly these new lockdowns that have come into place recently will not end until we have an answer about that Omicron variant. And so the hope is that these new restrictions put in place will end by Christmas, so people can go out again for Christmas and New Year's. But certainly they're going to need that answer on Omicron before they can end these restrictions. And until then, I suspect we will see restrictions in Western Europe continuing to tighten.
Dave, thanks for that. France 24's EU correspondent Dave Keating in Brussels.